My name is Victoria Agapova. I am a two-time winner of the All-Russian contest, The Big Change, The Call, and the author of a historical blog dedicated to the events and heroes of the Great Patriotic War. My great-grandfather, Alexander Boldarev, was a hero of the Soviet Union. He defended our country from the Germans in Ukraine and Belarus. He was not only a brave, but also a resourceful soldier. One day, Alexander Boldarev saved his comrades in arms from a shot-down, self-propelled gun. He did it in a very unusual way. He made a dummy out of his suit, and the Germans opened fire on it. At the same moment, Alexander Boldarev rushed to the shot-down car and drove it away, saving his friends. My great-grandfather's heroic deeds were numerous. They inspired me to create a patriotic community where I tell the younger generation about the heroes of the war and their achievements. I understand that young people need to be told about the war and historical facts in order to make it clear and interesting. But this is the biggest challenge for me now. In your opinion, how should the younger generation of our country be told about the war, historical facts, and the history of our ancestors in order to make them interested in learning history?
Vika, how did you learn this story about your great-grandfather?
My family. My mother told me about it because my great-grandfather lived to the time when my mother was born, and she told me how he came to the village.
Yes, her grandfather. You see, we have already talked about this. I have already mentioned that it is very important when this information is transmitted from one generation to another in the family. You see, you just said that your mother told you about it. You love your mother. She loves you. There is no doubt about it. You can see it right away, and you trust her. My mother told me a little bit about some episodes of the war. It is well known to everyone that they barely survived. I have already mentioned this during the blockade and during the time when my father was fighting at the front. They lost their little child there. And when people you trust completely say this, it of course reaches your heart, as I said, and it makes you want to do something yourself in order to consolidate this knowledge, consolidate this important information, and pass it on. Therefore, the most correct way is what happens in our families, when information is transmitted from parents to children, from children to their children, and so on and so forth. The most important thing is the truthfulness and credibility of the information. And, of course, the way this information is transmitted is also important. My relatives gave me a letter from my grandfather, which he wrote. I have already publicly mentioned this. During the war, he wrote to his son, who was in the active army. First of all, he wrote to me with mistakes. He was a village man, a peasant, and each sentence had 10 mistakes. But what a matter it was! He addressed his son to his son's name, "Dear Ivan Ivanovich," and then told him how his wife, his son's mother, died. There was a shooting. A bullet hit her in the stomach, and she was dying in his arms. And when she was dying, she said, she also said this. I will repeat it again, because it is very important. This is a characteristic feature of many of our people, regardless of their nationality, including Russian people. She understands that she is dying, and she says to him, and he writes all this in the letter, "Do not cry, do not upset me." She is dying, and she thinks about him. Can you imagine this? It is simply incredible, just incredible. And in the end, the conclusion is, beat these bastards. You see what a motivation it was. He addresses his son and so on. There are many household issues related to the household which are not essential in this case. But in general, when you take such things in the family, I took them and read them. You see, I am an adult. I studied at school, at university. I worked in special services. I worked in intelligence for almost 20 years. It seemed to me that I was an informed person. It seemed to me that I knew everything. But when I took the letter and began to read, I began to look at the events that took place in a different way. I kind of realized the fabric of the events that took place then. I realized how people lived, what they lived by, how they felt, what they talked about. And this never-ending truth is the most important thing. It must be conveyed. Of course, it is very important, if we are talking about such ways of disseminating information in the broad sense, it is very important that this work is as talented as, for example, the film, the excerpt from which we have just seen, or the work of musical art, visual art. But as I do, as we do, just as it happens in your family and in mine, as it happens in everyone's family.
Comrade Commander-in-Chief, I wish you health. It is a great honor and joy for me to be present at this meeting. Now, we have all seen an excerpt from the film based on the story of Boris Vasilyev. I am sure that no one among us has remained indifferent. Why is that? Because this work has a truth, a real military truth that cannot be invented. It must be experienced by participating directly in the battles. You know, the frontline poet of that time, Sergei Orlov, wrote very accurately about this. Such lines: I, the gunpowder-scented lines, took out from under the shelling on my hands. I am very glad that this truth is present in the works of modern writers, such as the hero of Russia, Maxim Bakharev, Oleg Roy, Alexei Presnikov, Alexei Shorokov, and many, many others. These are just a part of the names of that large group of talented, creative people who are born in this difficult time for Russia. Comrade Commander-in-Chief, we are ready to perform any tasks you have set, not only on the front, where the desired weaponry is being mined, but also on the cultural front. Based on this, I ask you to consider the possibility of creating a development program for the participants and veterans of special military operations in the field of culture and art. Thank you.
Thank you very much for what you do, both in the context of special military operations and now, for your creativity. How many such cases were there during the Great Patriotic War? The Soviet leadership, by the way, tried to protect our artists, sent them to evacuation, and so on. This is well known to everyone. Nevertheless, many of them went to the front on their own volition and died. Very young people, some of them wrote 1 or 2 works in their lifetime. You read them, you get to know them. Some of them wrote songs, folk songs. In fact, they have authors, but unfortunately, they died on the front. Because the activists of culture are also part of our people, who live with the people, fight with the people, and achieve victories with the people. Because creativity inspires people. How many wonderful songs were born during the Great Patriotic War? Songs that we still sing and enjoy. Films, works of art, music, and so on. You know, all this was born because creative people faced absolutely unique situations in their lives. And this encouraged them to express themselves, to write music. I think everyone knows this. The crossing, the left bank, the right bank, the rustling snow, the edge of the ice, and glory. For some it is glory, and for others it is dark water. And immediately, boom, an image is born in the head. This is so important. And so, of course, we will do everything to support such guys as you, talented, young, charged with helping the country, helping those people who are close to us and who not only use weapons, but also use their talent to bring victory closer. Thank you. We will definitely think about it, okay?